speaker is Dr. Hasan Sawaf, who is the founder of Explain and also a founding board member of Pi Campus School in Rome. In addition, he has founded several machine learning organizations and has been advisor to both startups and established companies in the USA, Canada, Germany, and the United Arab Emirates. Dr. Sawaf.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for having me. My name is Hasan Sawaf. I'm here to speak not in Islam. I'm not here to speak in my field of research. My field of research is speech translation. That was my PhD work, long time ago. Long time ago, before deep learning was a thing. So in '98, I started my work there. I started in NLP and machine translation actually in the early 90s, 92. So I experienced a few iterations and a few phase shifts in what AI really means. And but what I'm talking about today is actually something which is very close to my heart, which developed over the last years, which is authority in artificial intelligence science. What I'm enjoying very much is that this conference has the word application in it. I'm super passionate about this. We do a lot of good work in science, but when it comes then to take the science and making it an application, there is a few extra challenges which we need to worry about. All right, as a first step, a small disclaimer. This is work which I am basically my personal take on ethics in AI, my motivation and driver to contribute to this matter, and it is by no means complete. And I think, it is a new field. It is an important field, but it is in the process of getting developed. And I relied obviously on people which are much smarter than I am, from the European Commission, from Stanford, MIT, and others which did some research in this field. All right. Why do we need to worry about authority in machine learning science? So, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Union, said something which actually resonated quite well with me. She said, AI will be open. AI will open up new worlds for us, which is fantastic. But these worlds will need rules. When she said that, first I was a little shocked. Why do we want rules? Rules restrict. But in reality, when you think about it, she is actually talking about rules which increase the trust of the consumption and the utilization of AI. And the reason why this is a critical component today more than at any time is the growth which we have in it. So we have active startups are like going all through the roof. The papers, the amount of papers, I would challenge any one of us to basically say that we read all the papers in AI. There is no way. There is no way that we can do that. Revenues. My first startup in AI was in 2000. I predicted, or I estimated that in 2020 we will have $8 billion in revenue in AI. That's a joke. Today it's much more than that. And we heard earlier some of the numbers which we are looking towards. I think it's accelerating dramatically. But we also heard earlier in Dr. Majid's speech, the machine is starting to get in an area where it's getting better than the human. So there is a few use cases like the squat benchmarks. The human, you see the red lines, that's what the human can do. The machines are able to go beyond that. So this is a lot of the growth is dramatic, and we need to keep an eye on this. So AI ML use cases growth is beyond regular growth expectations. In the last 10 years, 100 times more use cases appeared since AI and ML science, and thousands of times since this discipline started. The discipline started in 1954, in particular speech and language. I mean, that's my background. So in 1954, we had basically 2 use cases which we are looking at. Now we are talking about speech and language alone in the thousands. All right, on a high level, what are the challenges of ethics in AI? On a high level, we're talking about explainability, we're talking about responsibility, we're talking about fairness, and we're talking about misuse. Explainability is, I think, relatively clear. We need to be able to identify why certain decisions were made by the AI, and need to be able to track back why that is. We need to also understand, for example, for the science perspective, how can we improve on the models which we have, and explainability is going to be a critical component in this. Responsibility. Responsibility comes in multiple dimensions. One is responsibility of doing, which element is responsible for what kind of decision. In machine learning, as you guys know, I mean, decisions are sometimes done by black boxes, and these black boxes have multiple components in them. So it's not an easy part. But also another dimension is responsibility for us doing maybe training of machine learning capabilities, machine learning models. Are we doing that responsibly? Are we looking at sustainability? Are we looking at our world, which we have only one of? Are we doing that in all these things? I think this is an important piece. Fairness is a critical component. Misuse, anyone can be, any technology can be misused. Bad actors exist in every corner of this world, and we need to put guardrails for this. So this leads to an AI code of ethics, where we, and this is basic work in progress, we can say, between different locales, organizations, governments, which actually look at the potential solution, or the main factors of solution are policy, education, and technology. I mean, the policy, we need to basically coordinate with what the policy makers do. The policy makers need to figure out what kind of rule set to put down so that we keep the scientists safe, the community safe. Education, I am in full agreement with Dr. Majid that we should actually start with educating the people about AI and the use of AI from very early on. So it should actually be the same like us learning math, the same like learning sciences. I mean, AI should be part of it. And technology. I mean, we need to build technology so that ethical AI can be achieved. Now, as I said, it's still in progress to build these codes of ethics, and I think it's a global problem to solve. It's not one country can solve it and it's solved. No, there's a collaboration. I mean, the world is shrinking, so to say. The connections are tighter. We need to actually hold our hands and collaborate on certain things. And I mean, some institutions, some organizations already did some work in this and did good studies. Others are in the process. But I think it is important for us to stay educated about where we are. And then applications of this code of ethics go across many applications. Things like healthcare, employment, welfare, services, drones, industrial applications, autonomous cars. I mean, all these things are playing. And then you have different components which are relevant to worry about the ethics, and some of them are certain, relatively clear. We define rules, very simple, and then other things are very fuzzy, and so forth. So this is like a little overview about what these different things are. And the speed of innovation in AI and ML currently is so high, we often use AI code of ethics reactively instead of thinking about it as part of our proactive efforts. When we are developing, it happens many times the news basically reminds us of something which we didn't think about after we deployed certain models. I mean, it happened to the large corporations in many instances, as you know. Now, how to create a healthy and responsible vision for AI in that context? We believe that in addition to the things which we are mentioning, one important component is in AI ML science development and reaping the value, we should augment the concept of ethics and fairness to include democratization. And that aspect has multiple reasons. So today, democratization, if we're looking about the innovation, where is the innovation coming from? And you see that it is coming from the large corporations. Think companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Samsung, Alibaba, Tencent, Uber, Didi, companies which have huge amounts of data, and they have the scientists. Why is that? The main reasons, I believe, is the higher availability of data, of course, and the better access to compute, of course. But I think also an important component is that there is a shorter path from development to the test. So whenever there is a model which we are developing, we can test it relatively quickly, and then basically go into the next iteration. To achieve deep democratization, we need to make any novel AI ML use case and the resulting research better visible and easier accessible to the entirety of the AI community. So open source, definitely a component. Access to data, definitely a component. And then the next thing I want to talk about is actually since 1954, again in my area of research, AI and ML science is driven by benchmarking. So if I think about DARPA, used to define basically the use case. NIST is an agency in the US which basically does the metrics, does the benchmarking, defines the metrics. NIST defines and measures the metrics for scientists' work. Benchmarking results and make these information public for teams to push each other and achieve the best-in-class results. So if DARPA wouldn't have worked this way, we wouldn't have Siri, we wouldn't have Google Translate came basically out of this. We wouldn't have had Amazon's Alexa, we wouldn't have had so many different things, basically all derivatives of these kinds of programs. And I think that was a great program, or is a great program. DARPA is continuing this. Now, what is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is that oftentimes the data sets which were developed in these programs are too academic. They're too clean. That's not the real life. And so, so it might be directionally okay to use this, but we need another level of research to take those, what we do in academia basically, or in the research labs, and take that and make it work life as well. Sorry. In the last 10-15 years, the community started using these metrics that scientists worked on for like these decades and apply them on real-life data, which is not always effective. I have an example. So I started the AI team inside eBay, and we wanted to basically build capabilities to break down the borders between countries so that you can sell an item from one country to the next. Of course, language is a component. You search in, it was Russian at that time. I mean, and then Russian's customer wanted to basically buy something which are not offered in Russia, and then we basically built a machine translation system to do this. So what we did initially is we used what we call blue score to identify what is the best machine translation. And the translation which came out of it was okay, but it was not super. So what we had to do is we needed to turn around and look actually, do we have a different metric which eBay is concerned about rather than blue score? And we decided we're going to use a conversion rate, where the customer, when they see a product, and how high is the probability that they convert that product to something they buy. Hence, we built a new metric, and it was generating much better results. Today, 25% of the value of eBay is based basically on these kinds of capabilities, because we didn't look about only the academic metrics, but also beyond that into the application. Benchmarking. Optimally, the community, and in particular the consumer of the AI and ML technology, has to be able to suggest, define, and develop metrics that are relevant to them. So it is easier, of course, if we have one metric and we optimize always against that. Speech recognition, word error rate, machine translation, blue score, etc., etc. But the example of eBay shows us we should actually be thinking beyond that. We should think about the application and think backwards from the application towards what we want to achieve. As systems and use cases use case complexity increases, single metric optimization has a huge shortcoming. For example, gender and cultural bias for speech recognition and racial bias for computer vision, etc., etc. So we tend, as scientists, to sit down and optimize towards that one metric and forget what actually side effect it might have, like gender bias, like cultural bias, like racial bias, etc. And benchmarking used to be an effort that can be done by the scientists themselves. So they build the model, they run basically the benchmark, they come back to their professors and say, my word error rate decreased by so and so, and that was easy. Now that basically the dimensions of what to measure is getting more complex, large corporations have dedicated teams, and they're not one or two people, they're like tens and hundreds of people who are doing nothing else but benchmarking. And the technology providers are lacking access to real-life use cases to benchmark, unless they're big tech big tech companies, where the supplier and the consumer are sitting basically an office apart. So how do we level the playing field while keeping fair ownership across all players? We analyze the typical approach of how AI/ML is typically deployed, and to understand basically what kind of platforms and tools are necessary to enable this deep democratization I'm basically marking. And we saw that generally the application of AI/ML goes on through 4 stages. We have a discover phase, benchmarking phase, build phase, and a deployment phase. Of course, I mean, being in AI, oftentimes things start with the benchmark. We need to benchmark it against certain real-life data sets, and then it is actually a cycle. And we continue to improve when we put this thing into a cycle. So I established this company, Explain, to enable everyone to level that playing field. So Explain team came up with a new automated benchmarking service to enable every technology provider to test their technology on real-life data, while the data is kept private and preserved, and the bias towards a specific technology provider is kept minimal. That is achieved by not disclosing the data to the user meaning the technology developer here, and only benchmarking results. So the technology provider, as well as the actual integrator or the user of this AI, can see the benchmarking results without needing to look into the data, which keeps everyone safe around the table, so to say. So that's basically what I'm saying here in this slide. So the consumer of novel AI/ML tech benefits as they have one location to go and evaluate large amounts of state-of-the-art systems and models on their own data safely and reliably without having the fear that personal information might be shared or something like that. So to level the playing field even further, I mean, what we need to use AI/ML to intelligently source data, we put more focus on the edge cases of the deeper knowledge and risk reduction. Explainable AI techniques can help us debugging models, model architectures and respective data to improve performance and reduce negative side effects. What am I trying to say here? When we do benchmarking and we basically use explainable AI techniques, we can basically see what are the missing things in our system which we need to develop on. It can be data which we need to source, to find, to utilize. It can be the modeling maybe which we developed is not exactly right, and so forth. So explainable AI is going to help us source the right data or drive the development of the technology. And we are very passionate about this one. So right now we are enabling the benchmarking and the serving of 32,000 state-of-the-art models in and around machine translation, speech recognition, and other NLP. We're expanding further into other areas. What are the benefits of democratization like this, and how do we drive how do we want to drive that response further? So I think an important component is that to keep ethics in our mind, we need to think about a distributed ownership model. So we have to all feel responsible for keeping basically ethics in our mind while we are developing, while we're integrating, while we're using. And we need to do that in a distributed way because AI and ML systems and component development is very fast. And if ethical considerations is only centrally regulated, if it's only centrally regulated, the regulating body might be a bottleneck, and we are always trying to catch up with the state-of-the-art technology. And the thing is that oftentimes even regulations and policies are oftentimes in place, and they need slight extensions so that they fit with the AI use. Primarily, we need to educate people on them. So the scientists should be educated on these policies, so that we implement AI and ML for the respective use case in the right manner. For example, privacy. Privacy is not a new problem to solve. We are already dealing with that for a long time. Insurances, healthcare, we all deal with that for a long time, even before AI was an integral part of this kind of technology. But we as scientists need to get educated about it. What am I allowed to use? What should I not use? If I'm using some data wrong, is it not my responsibility as well? I might actually overstep my boundaries here. Also, to be highly effective, the AI and ML science community more than ever will have to gain domain knowledge in the domain where the technology is going to be implemented at, which means I'm building a computer vision model for healthcare to identify cancers, for example. I need to understand that domain before I do a good job in that. Hence, we need to educate the AI scientists in the domain, and we need to educate also the domain specialists in what the AI has to do. So again here, data science and techniques of AI and ML should be part of general education. We need to think about standardized tooling and platforms that help debugging and deep diving in the model attributes. We need to support open source for algorithms, and we need to focus on data and benchmark-centric AI and ML development. So that's I think the foundation, so that we can get into some kind of distributed authority. We are all responsible for what we are doing with AI. And it has to be driven and managed by policymakers, obviously, and supported and informed and enriched by the AI and ML community. So that's, thank you for your attention, and I'm here for questions.
Ethics in research related to AI and metrics and things like that. There is a tendency now, for example, privacy. They are using privacy by design. Are you attempting to build this in the methodologies to build applications of software?
Yes. I think if we think about privacy is one aspect, one dimension, right? There's more to it, but definitely, if we think about it, while we are building the models, we don't need to worry about it post facto and correcting and repairing our things. But yes,
so exactly. Autonomously, when I build, for example, a system, I should be aware, all my software should be aware about these regulations. I should be like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor Hasan. Dr. Abdul Salam, I'm the Dean of Admissions here at BSU, Computer Science major. One issue is a very important issue you touched in the beginning, which is the trust. That we need to increase the level of trust in order to reap more value to our systems. Now, in my opinion, one factor that plays a very important role to building trust is transparency. Now, how would transparency?
Transparency. Yes, I agree. Yes.
Now, sometimes, as you said, machines will take decision on my behalf. There is no transparency. I don't know how they reach this decision. How do you think this transparency can be factored in your framework that you developed or presented?
So, transparency is definitely a core component in the concept of like explainable AI and so forth. So I think it plays a role both directions, right? So I totally think that this is going to be, or it is key. I mean, it's not going to be. It is today already key in the process. And transparency comes in multiple levels. One is actually understanding the model and what it's doing, understanding the data, but also understanding the algorithm. What is the algorithm doing? So this is why I'm a very big proponent of using open source and disclosing basically how the software is working and how the model is architected and all of that. I totally agree with you.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Dr. Takara Hoke, and one of my roles here at Princeton University is I'm a faculty member of the College of Humanities and Sciences. I strongly believe in your recommendation to include artificial intelligence as part of general education. In fact, as a psychologist, whether I'm teaching psychology, computer communication skills, or personal development skills, I require my students to look up artificial intelligence. Can you share with us some best examples of universities that have integrated artificial intelligence inside of their programs, specifically the general education programs, considering there's going to be differentiated levels of computer skills? So how would that actually be done?
Oh, this is a very good question, and it's a presentation by itself, actually. So, multiple presentations, actually. So, I don't know of any location where that is part of the curriculum yet. As far as I know, I don't know of any. There might be, but I know of programs which are extracurricular or the specific schools doing that on their own in time or whatever. And they're doing that in a playful way. So I can tell, my personal experience, my children both actually, my daughter and my son, went into robotics classes, post school. They enjoyed it, the school was supporting it with infrastructure and so forth, and they basically were there is this first robotics competition, which is an international robotics competition across the world, letting Lego robots doing certain tasks and all of that. That was actually I loved this program. My son and my daughter is now doing law, so she's decided to do something else than math. But my son, for example, is an engineer. And I think this was like how do you call that, the seed in his thinking. He was 10 years old and he started programming and so forth, Java at that point. Now he's doing all kinds of things I don't even understand. So this is I think this is one of the aspects. Another aspect is we think of AI and ML to be educated only computer scientists, maybe engineering and so forth. And then if I look at some of the schools, MIT and Stanford being some of them, or University of Berlin does that, in München they do that, in Paris they do that. They educate not only the engineering students about AI and the use of AI, but they go beyond. Social sciences and politics and so forth. We all need, basically everyone, to understand how AI is working and how it can be applied. Maybe we don't need to understand gradient descent in that kind of category, but we need to understand what is doable, what is feasible in there. These are two things which come to my mind. There's probably hundreds of these things. I think for me it's important that AI should not actually end with the computer scientists, the people who start at the university after high school and then end with their master's or PhD and so forth. AI is actually all of our responsibility across and beyond. And that's, yeah, so I fully am supportive. I mean, having that kind of activity coming from universities, going beyond, is beautiful. Thank you for the work.
Hi, I'm Naveed, a faculty member here at Computer Science Department. So I have used the cognitive services of Microsoft Azure for the text analysis. The speech is going to be like, I mean, when we come about the speech analysis, so it has to be converted into text and then analyzed. When you see the cognitive services of Microsoft Azure, that it's so much mature, I mean, if you ask them, the Microsoft. But honestly, when I analyze any text, it gives me like weird analysis. Like for example, it says positive, it says negative, it says neutral, but they are very much weird. So I mean, like this is the AI like Microsoft is doing, spending a lot of money. So how can we achieve such things?
I have a story to tell here. So I have the highest respect of the scientists, my friends at Microsoft actually. Sentiment analysis is a problem. It's a big problem actually, not only for the machine but also for the humans. And my philosophy is, so I was leading the AI team in Amazon, and we had basically a similar, I mean the result is very similar there. I think it is important for us to get educated or educate the users of the technology that sometimes customization is necessary. So if you take off-the-shelf capabilities from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, for sentiment analysis in particular, or emotion recognition, or something like that, it's going to basically be almost like a coin toss. It's gonna be a coin toss. Not much more efficient than that. Now, if you take that technology and you fine-tune it towards, let's say, specific products or specific domains and stuff like that, the quality increases dramatically. And then you have a positive use case. So using it off the shelf, and I think this is the thing which we as scientists, as a community, should educate the users from, but also maybe the technology providers should be more upfront telling that story instead of saying, yeah, we have yet one model on our platform, why don't you come use it? And people have the same exact issue, like they use it, it's not working for me, so throw it out again.
Thanks, Doctor. I'm Dr. Mohammed Al-Rasiri, Head of Department, Computer Science Department. I just have a question. I work on an OB, and we mostly train models using open source data sets. and you talked about ethics in AI, and there is an issue with the bias. So should we consider bias after we train models or during training models, or should we collect data and like investigate bias before training the models?
Yes.
It's a big issue from what to consider the bias.
Yeah, no, that is actually one of the motivations why I started the company I have, Explain, 1.5 years ago. Well, because I believe that some people, so it was my experience during my tenure as Amazon, the director of the applied machine learning group there, that there was some scientists which were working somewhere in the corner of Pittsburgh in this case, and they were doing a great job, but they didn't get the visibility and they didn't get the right data to train on. But the algorithms were like super good. So I think this is why we need to basically build frameworks where you can, even without needing to look into the actual core data, that you can actually take the algorithm, put it into the data, do the retraining, for example, take the derivative out of it and make it available. And my belief is that institutions like universities and all of that should actually benefit from it commercially as well. So if you have models, you should actually be able to put them directly out into the market and benefit from the feedback which you can get out of there. Thank you very much.
One more question. One more? In that case, thank you very much indeed, sir. Dr. Yamani, Dr. O'Connell, would you care to come to the